The mental health of Canadians is vital to the prosperity of our communities and families. The LGBT community faces suicide attempts at a rate of 4 times higher than the national average. Furthermore, 1 in 5 trans youth have attempted suicide in the past 12 months. Do you believe this is a mental health issue that requires immediate action? And how will you advocate for the LGBT plus community in mental health care?
That's an excellent question. Thank you very much. I wish I had more than 90 seconds, but I'll start by saying that I'm extremely proud to be part of a political party whose leader was the first Prime Minister to walk in a Pride parade. In addition to that, Justin Trudeau apologized on behalf of the federal government for legislation that had been put in place in decades and perhaps centuries past that led to the wrongful treatment of LGBTQ2 people. In terms of our platform and moving forward, we have committed to investing $10 million over 3 years to help more LGBT organizations hire more staff, expand services, and help more people. Specifically with respect to mental health, we plan to invest $2 million a year more into the 24/7 mental health crisis hotline. And we also plan to work with provinces and territories to stop things like conversion therapy and make amendments to the criminal code to prohibit it. This is one of those situations where Canadians realize that it is our differences that make us stronger. It is our differences that make us Canada. Canada is a country that we don't, particularly feel as though there are some norms that we have to follow. We celebrate how we are all different, whether that's through. See, I told you I needed more than 90 seconds, but you're in a great position now. We can't miss you.
Mr. Kovacic, same question to you.
So conservative government, me personally, I was walking on parade this year, first time myself, and I look at me, I'm minority too. I came here, I have a heavy accent, and my job as an MP, make sure we represent everybody equally, we unite Canadians, not divide Canadians, and as I mentioned before, we will increase at least 3% health and social programs, so we actually can help everyone, and we have to make sure everybody treated equally. And as my personal experience, with this election I exposed myself and I got attacked, mocking my accent, unfortunately, and it's 21st century, so I know how that people feel. As a father, my daughter actually have to take her last name at school so she not get bullied. So this is painful for me to talk this, so I will do everything, make sure we fix this problem. Thank you.
Thank you for passing the mic down. Just so you are aware, you do have 5 seconds after Al raises her hands to finish up your remarks.
I'm not sure if you had an opportunity to see, but as you passed the tables coming in, one of our banners has a mosaic quote on it by Henri Nouwen. Henri Nouwen is a renowned, he's passed away in the 90s, but he's a renowned Dutch theologian, and he worked with a large community of physically disabled, and he also struggled with being gay in his lifetime. That quote about the community as a mosaic, the many colored stones I have deliberately placed in this campaign. As this campaign started, as the party was very new and there was riding associations were just forming and there was no candidates, a lot of narrative was going on around there, a lot of labels that were not just. And this was my own personal way of pushing back. It's on the back of my business cards, that community is mosaic, each colored stone. We do not differentiate between the type of stone or the color of the stone. In our party, we pride ourselves literally on treating everybody equally. We don't pander to any particular group, but we will also stand up vigorously and steadfastly for the rights of any group. And just on a personal note, there's a family I'm very close with whose teenager has come out as trans, so I am literally just learning this myself now on the go through my interactions with that family. And I also want to say that as an MP, I want to see more psychologists, where there's a shortage of psychiatrists. I want to increase the frontage for mental health treatment. And I'd like to share with Ian, he hasn't heard this yet incidentally, so you're actually hearing it first. And 5 seconds ago, I think, working with Ian, I have an idea for that to increase the expanse of mental health.
Thank you for your response.
The NDP, part of our comprehensive healthcare strategy, as I mentioned off the top with my remarks, is to invest money in mental health care for all Canadians, and certainly including members of the LGBTQ community, as well as two-spirited peoples who may need to access mental health services. I'll make a more global, so our commitment to these sorts of things is clear and it's firm, and I'll make a more global comment about my party. My party is running the most diverse slate of candidates ever in a Canadian federal election. And respecting and affirming the rights of all Canadians and pushing back against the currents of intolerance and fear that we see coming out of certain segments of Canadian society and even being articulated in the platforms of some of the parties is something that we stand resolutely against. So affirming the rights and the dignity of LGBTQ plus people and two-spirited people is a fundamental core piece of who we are as a party.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Ms. Christmas, same question.
Thank you. So the Greens were actually the first party to propose the legalization of same-sex marriage, and people might not know that. But we are for gender equity, and that includes the LGBTQ as well as two-spirited communities. But one of the things that we are going to do is repeal all federal laws and policies that are discriminatory on the grounds of sexuality, including, which still exists, Section 159 of the Criminal Code, that refers to intersex reality as a defect, an aberration, or by any other derogatory terms. One of the things with respect to healthcare, I've already indicated that we are looking to create community-based care, so it's not just psychology and psychiatrists, it's really peer-to-peer supports. It wasn't in the bio, but actually my PhD is in youth wellness, and so I had the privilege of talking with 16 youth here in the community, several of which were LGBTQ, and I can tell you I'm acutely aware of the issues that people are dealing with. I am acutely aware of the fact that our shelter system is dangerous for LGBTQ kids who are unfortunately coming out and then having home lives that mean that they have to leave. So one of the things that the party wants to do is to create an education awareness program that would not be dissimilar to the massive public health investment that went into the AIDS campaigning in the 1980s. We really need to bring to the forefront that LGBTQ are citizens and that love is love.
Thank you, Ms. Christmas. Unfortunately, time is up. We'll be moving on to the next question. Thank you for all your responses.
Okay, thank you. We will now be moving on to our next question, starting with Mr. Ruslan. And the topic of this question is vote splitting. So just for the audience's information, clarity of opinion in democracy is important as ever, as is having a choice at the ballot box to vote for the candidate that best represents your values. But it can also bring a unique set of problems. Strategic voting, which is the practice of voting for the candidate or party that you think will win, but it may not be your first choice. This is so-called vote splitting, the effect of having more than one party on the left and the right sides of the political spectrum. Welcome to Canada. This is talked about heavily in each election year. The question to candidates is, what is your stance on strategic voting, and how do you feel we can best address the problems inherent in our voting system? Do you support a change to the way that we hold our elections in this country? And what change would you implement if your party and you yourself was elected? Thank you. Mr. Ruslan, you may begin.
I know it's almost 40-50% people undecided. This is a difficult year for make decision. But as you know, the main focus is affordability. Our main focus to make life more affordable, create better paid jobs, boost our economy, and actually right now we see what happened with the Liberal Party. They don't want to go on their own record because they fail and the life very expensive, so it's why they focusing on Doug Ford or Stephen Harper era. So now you guys have choice, or you want to have better life, quality jobs, better economy, more opportunity, or you want to grow debt and deficit and mortgage yourself, kids, the future, or you want to have a better life with more opportunity. So this is very important election, and if I get elected as UMP, I will be the strong voice who actually fight for you and be champion for Kingston and the islands. And as you know, I speak 7 languages, and I went through, when I came here, I went through like everybody, Canadians. I used to make $7 an hour, then I went up, and now I'm successful because Canada, great country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yakovichuk. That was perfectly timed. Mr. Brook, once you get the microphone, you may begin. Thank you.
Thank you, great question. I had a surprise earlier in the week. I had no idea it was coming. Fair Vote Canada recognized me as one of only 4 candidates in the country that has been endorsed by them, outside all the Green candidates and the NDP candidates whose platforms they already automatically endorse. By myself, Jody Wilson-Raybould, who I greatly respect, she's a principled woman who paid a price for her convictions. Another PPC candidate in Southeastern Ontario, Sybil Trim, and Nathaniel Erskine-Smith, a Liberal incumbent. So I'm very proud of that, and when I touched the little tile and to see how did I get this, what did I do to deserve this endorsement, and it was my involvement with the Yes campaign, that historic referendum here locally, and I did pay a price for that. That's the reason the Conservatives stuck my head on a pike on top of the LaSalle Causeway. But things happen for a reason, and I'm in a good place. So will I defend electoral reform? You betcha. And our party is certainly open to that, and we're already our conversations amongst us candidates before in the next 2 weeks. I think I can keep, there's an arrogance to this question sometimes when I hear it. I don't think it's intended, but it's as if somebody owns somebody's vote, and I really find that hard to digest. From my experience, what we're seeing with us, we're a new party, is we're vote gathering. My Liberal campaign manager is a former Liberal, excuse me. I have NDP on my campaign, Green. We're literally vote gathering, not vote splitting. So, and people who have never voted.
Thank you, Mr. Brook. Mr. Walker, you may begin when you're ready.
So this is the question, I think, for a lot of us up here, and I'm going to try to answer the best I can in the 90 seconds, because I could actually maybe have you here for an hour talking about vote splitting and our current electoral system and where we should move. So let me begin by saying that this is one of the #1 questions that I get asked at the door with regard to people asking why they should vote NDP, and I realize that this is not a debate, and I'm not going to attack anyone, but I will say that because of decisions that were made during the last federal election, or after the last federal election, that this is a question that continues to be asked, and it needn't have been the case. So we are saddled with a 19th century electoral system that is more like a horse race than something that resembles electoral system that we should have in the 21st century. We need to move past that system, we need to jettison it and move to mixed member proportional representation or some sort of proportional representation system, so that you don't have the sorts of situations that we have right now, where essentially 30% of the population can elect a supermajority and have us all sitting around on a on a Sunday wondering whether our kids are going to be going to school on Monday morning, right? So these are the sorts of things that I think are indicative of a real democratic deficit in our culture. And should an NDP government be elected, we'll take care of that. There's another scenario that I won't talk about until maybe a week before the election. Anyway, that's me.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Ms. Christmas, you may begin when you're ready.
So once again, the Greens were the first ones to bring forward the concept of electoral reform, and Elizabeth May did actually serve on Mr. Trudeau's commission on looking at electoral reform after the Liberals had promised over 1,800 times that this would be the last election that we find ourselves in this situation. So it's disconcerting, but I'll tell you why it's disconcerting, because the actual concept of vote splitting and strategic voting doesn't work when you have 35% of the electorate not going to vote. So what we have been saying, the Greens have been saying, this is the vote of youth. Please vote. We want you to vote Green, but please vote, because we've seen time and time again now since the US election or our provincial election that people are just holding their noses and going to vote, or they're not going to vote at all. Now, all the pundits have said this is going to be a minority government. This is when you make these things happen. So the really important point is, vote for the party that you feel represents your values. Why? Because it's going to be a minority government, period, full stop. But you want to make sure that you're voting for a party that if you care about electoral reform, that you make sure that they do. And I can tell you, the Greens unequivocally are all about proportional representation. We live in a federation that is so diverse, it is ridiculous that we have this system. And also too, in a democracy, each vote should count. So if you look at historically, Europe, there has never been a Green party that has ruled in Europe, but there have been very strong Green coalitions pushing governments.
Thank you, Ms. Christmas. Mr. Gerritsen, you may begin when you're ready.
See, the problem with comparing Canada to Europe is that our country is huge geographically. The member that I sit next to in the House of Commons is from Kelowna, BC. What matters to Kelowna, BC doesn't matter nearly as, or the issues don't align with what really matters to southeastern Ontario. Mr. Brooke referenced the Yes campaign that he was involved in. I voted yes to that too. That was for ranked balloting. And ranked balloting is actually a really good model because ranked balloting makes sure that every vote counts within the riding. I believe that the riding is important because if you have an issue, you're not getting your EI or you have an issue with your passport or something like that, you need somebody that you can actually go to. My office for the last year has been on Princess Street. You have an actual place that you can go to. With proportional representation, you would end up with a list of people that would be selected based on how many votes each party got, but then there's nobody that's directly the person that you would go to. So the ranked balloting actually passed, or the yes vote passed, and in the next municipal election, we'll have the opportunity to test that out. And I think that you're going to see that candidates get along a lot better, because when you know that you're depending on somebody else's second or third choice, it's going to prevent you from trying to alienate yourself from other people. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that works out in the next municipal election, and it could be a model moving forward.
Great, thank you, Mr. Gerritsen. We will now move to our next topic of discussion. Thank you.
If you could just pass the microphone down to Andy Brooke, that'd be great. Thank you. The next question is about energy independence. The Kingston area has over the past decade gone through a boom of green energy. What commitment can you make today to those in the crowd who are looking for federal leadership on the green energy file?
I'll pick up where I left off in one of my previous answers. Where I ran out of time was at the 90-second mark, was on the 5th of March, the city declared a climate emergency. And that has effectively become a strategic priority for this city. And what I'm going to try to do is, I've called myself a climate centrist. I'm not an alarmist, as when I was an RCMP officer, if I showed up at the scene of a situation and I was all alarmed, I was really not much good for anybody. So my view of this is that I don't believe the science is all settled, and I also don't accept all the science on either side. And even last night in the leaders' debate, you watched the Green and the NDP leader at one point sort of go at one another for a brief moment over the science, and I thought it was a surreal moment. But we do have a strategic priority in this city, and one thing that's pressing and facing this city right now is Plan 2014. It is not climate change that's actually affecting this particular instance, the lake levels. That's totally man-regulated. The F limits that are in place to protect Montreal, we're supposed to be equal sharing of pain, and right now at this end of the lake, Kingston and neighboring communities are sharing an unequal portion of the lake. This cannot continue. So I'm already got a mind